Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Tune In with Trevor. I'm Trevor McShane. Today we're interviewing one of the greatest producers in the history of recorded music. His name is Ken Caillat. He produced one of the biggest selling albums in history. He won the Grammy for it. The album was Rumours by the great Fleetwood Mac. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
When you started making Rumours, when did you first realize this is special?
I don't think I did for 9 or 12 months. We were so close to it. We were working so many hours every single day. We never got a chance to step back. I remember the first time Lindsay played Go Your Own Way to me, and you would think that's brilliant, but he played it on acoustic guitar, and he was playing his guitar so hard, I remember his veins were sticking out of his neck. He said, on way, and he broke like 3 strings while he was playing. And I'm going, whoa, this is kind of odd sounding. I didn't recognize it as a great hit. I didn't recognize Dreams as a hit.
Much of the album was recorded at the record plant in Sausalito. Why?
We wanted to be away from the lawyers. No offense.
I should mention, when I was a young lawyer, one of my first jobs was to do the contract for when Stevie Nicks and Lindsay Buckingham joined Fleetwood Mac. But that was then. And so tell us about the dynamics of the individuals while making the album.
Well, Stevie is very extroverted and very aware of herself. I mean, no offense, Stevie, but we used to learn never to ask her how she's doing, because you could lose half your day while she's telling you how her dog's got problems and things. Lindsay was very quiet and always nervous and rolling joints. He, like 24 hours, he just had a box of pot and just rolling. John was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
John
McVie
played bass.
Yeah. Mick Fleetwood was the father of the group. He talked, and he loves to talk, and he would spend his time and describing what we need to do. We need to make the record better. And then Christine was lovely as usual.
Christine McVie. But what was happening was that Christine McVie and John McVie were divorcing. Lindsay and Stevie were breaking up. And Jenny, the wife of
Mick
Fleetwood, left him.
Right.
After having an affair with like his best friend.
Right, exactly.
So
everyone was distraught. So the first few days of the sessions, I'm working, and first thing I heard some loud voices, and I turned around to my engineer's chair just to see Christine and her best friend, who was John. She was John McVie's date. And they both threw champagne in his face. I just turned around to see them go, shh.
Because he said something rude.
He said something stupid.
Right.
Christine wanted to have her boyfriend, the lighting director, Curry Grant, come to the sessions, and he forbid her to do it. But she says, well, you have Sandra. And he says, she means nothing to me.
Okay, so look, I want to let everybody know that Ken wrote a book here called Making Rumours, which I have read and commend to all of you. It's a fascinating story, not only for those interested in engineering and producing, but also the dynamics of what happened in making that album. And get this, there was a follow-up book about the next album, Tusk, called Get Tusk. So let's go back to working in the studio with them. I mean, there was a lot of drugs, wasn't there?
Well, you have to define a lot of. In my opinion, there wasn't very much.
Okay.
I mean, we had long hours, 14-hour days, and so you can only drink so much coffee.
There was coke.
There was coke, there was marijuana, and there was alcohol.
Right.
So, but anybody who knows cocaine, everybody usually, if they're doing a lot of it, they have their own supply. Mm-hmm. And they bought, I guess, a group batch of coke, and it used to sit on the front of the console. and they would say, "Can somebody bring us something? We're getting tired." And one of the roadies would bring the bag out for everyone to enjoy.
One of the things I read in the book was that they were not socializing with each other because of the dynamics of the splitting up, but they worked together coherently, cohesively in the studio, right?
Right. Well, this is, I think, due to Stevie and her attorney, Mickey Shapiro. Stevie, I remember I heard her on the phone with somebody. When I met Fleetwood Mac, they had just finished their White Album, the album prior to Rumours, and that's how I was mixing the radio single for Rhiannon. And we went into the studio, and the radio single at that time dropped to radio. And we had this protection of the previous album climbing the charts, and the labels weren't interested in rocking the boat. They didn't want to bother us to do anything. But so when we I forgot what I was saying. My point. So I think I'll get it. So anyway, Stevie got a phone call from her attorney, and he said, "Stevie, I don't know, the previous record is looks like it's going to be a smash hit." And he says, "I can only tell you one thing. Just please, if you can, my best advice is if you can make this record that you're making now as good as that record, you'll be superstars. You'll never have to work again." And this was Stevie's thing. She used to always say, "I don't want to be a cleaning lady anymore. I'm tired," because she used to have to clean her previous producer's house to make money. So she said to the group that day, she goes, "Guys, I just talked to the attorney, and this is what he said, and I know we're all breaking up, but let's just put that aside and try to make the best record we can."
Why did it take a year?
It takes a long time when you're taking every instrument and examining it and polishing it, and I mean, that's what it took.
You started off, you produced the record with Richard Dashut.
Right, I was hired as only engineer.
Right. Tell us about how you ended up becoming the producer.
Well, so I was a little nervous because I thought they don't have a producer now, and they were expecting Richard and I to be their reflection in the mirror, so to speak. We could give them advice on what we're hearing. But I soon found that they had these great instruments, and my gift was I could make music, guitars, pianos sound incredible if I had the time to do it. And so I would take these effects and put them on the guitars and on the piano and the vocals and things sounding like the Beatles a little bit. And I noticed I put some delays on one of Lindsay's guitars, and it was beautiful. It was ching, ching, ching going through the speakers. And I started mixing. I let them listen in. This might be too technical. Listen to the headphones in stereo. I wanted them to hear the mixes as they would be in stereo. Back then, it was like most studios had mono headphones. So I used to make the sound really glorious. And at this one instance, when I put the delays on the guitar, Lindsay said he changed his part to fit with what I did. And I would realize that, what I did as an engineer just had an effect, or a profound effect on the song. And I actually thought, that's kind of producing, which I kind of reached around, patted myself on the back.
By the time you finished recording the White Album, as they call the Fleetwood Mac album, had become a major, major smash, right?
It was climbing the charts, but we started making Rumours in January of '76, and the White Album didn't peak at number one until August of '76.
Wow.
So that was almost 8 months into the record.
And by that time, they were huge, weren't they?
They were getting huge, yeah.
Right. So what happened? Tell me, I enjoyed reading about when you presented it to the Warner executives. What was that like?
Well, again, we were so tired. I couldn't tell whether we had hits or not, but I had taken all the mixes on. I had a Revox 2-track tape recorder that I would take everywhere. So Warner's wanted to hear what we were doing, and this is like in month 9 or 10, I think. We pulled into to Warner's over in Burbank. I set up the reel, and we played, and they were all kind of stiff record guys, and I played Dreams, and they didn't say much. It was kind of quiet. So, and I was kind of, Richard and I looked at each other like, uh-oh, maybe it's not so good. So Mick said, go your own way. So I loaded it up and hit play. And I remember they stood up and they were applauding. It was these different stuffy record guys were literally applauding us. And Mick said, and they said, let's hear something else. And Mick said, nah, we're not doing it anymore. Leave them wanting. So the label went nuts over and that's the first time I'd ever had a reaction like that to a label.
Right. And so then the record came out and it just took off, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
40 million units, one of the top 10 records in the history.
Still, yeah.
And, but I wanted you to tell the story of how you ended up, you got money out of this to some of the profits, record royalties. Tell us about that.
So Richard and I were working with Lindsay a lot, and Lindsay kept, I guess we just were able to make it things. He would come up and say, I need to change my acoustic guitar part. I need to do this. I remember he wanted to do on one song, he wanted to change John's bass. And I said, no, I don't think you can do that. But John's bass had he was a secondhand news, and John's bass was boom, 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 boom. A lot of notes all over the place, taking a lot of musical real estate. And Lindsay wanted it simplified. He wanted to add some parts. And Lindsay just wanted to be boom, 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 boom with the beat. And anyway, so and when he did that, then he was able to put more acoustic guitars and accents in the record.
And what I'm asking you about is how you got points on the record. You initially weren't going to get record royalties. What happened?
Mick and John came out and they went up to me and Richard, and they said, dash it, Caillat, now, outside, and we want to talk to you. And they were very stern, and they said, you two are fired. Richard and I looked at each other and started laughing. Like, no, nobody would do that. We've been working 14 hours a day, and we're doing great work. Anyway, they said, all right, you're not. You're actually going to become producers. And I remember Richard said, and this is in month 9 or 10, and Richard said, Ken, do you know what this means? I said, maybe. He goes, it means we're rich. And sure enough, I mean, I was making $10,000 a day, what my accountant said, when the album came out. But I think that what I liked, I ended the book with the record was done. I hadn't been able to, my camera broke, and I went into Studio City Camera to get my camera repaired. And I came out to my car, and Scooter, my little dog, who traveled with me everywhere, was in the car, and I stuck the key in the ignition, and I turned it on. I didn't start the engine, but I turned it on, and I think it was KLOS, said, we have this great honor, we're going to play the entire Rumours album. And he said, it's fantastic, turn it up. And I never heard any of my music ever on the radio, and suddenly I was sitting in the car. I didn't even want to start the engine because I knew the radio would turn off. But Scooter and I sat there and listened to the first half of Rumours blasting, and we didn't have cell phones or anything, so I was sitting there in the car, like, waving at people, like, hey, my music's playing. And so I listened to the whole album on KLOS, and that's when I knew that we had something really big.
And here we are all these years later, and it's still doing great, isn't it?
Still talking about it, too.
Right. And you, at a certain point, when you left Sausalito, came back down to Los Angeles, and then Lindsay Buckingham kind of took over on his own, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a lot of ideas that he wanted to put in, like the bass lick, and he wanted to put a guitar accents in, and harmonics, and just these colorful sonic things. And we spent, I think, 3 months in Wally Heider's in L.A. Just working with Lindsay. So Richard and I would just sit there and we'd take every song apart, and he'd go, "What's wrong with that?" And we'd fix something. And
Did the band go along with it, or were they miffed?
no, they all went to Hawaii. They were all tired, so they left us to spend the summer working in Heider's Studio 4. But they were fine. I remember when they came back, and we had to tell John that we want to change his bass. He was pissed. And then Mick started laughing that they were doing that to John, and my assistant engineer Chris Morris looked over Mick, says, "It's not so funny, Mick. Wait till Lindsay tells you what he wants to do with your drums."
Was the Kleenex box at one point?
Yeah. So Lindsay wanted these tom fills in Go Your Own Way and the chain, and Lindsay wanted to just kind of rock us and disrespectful and pow, 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 pow. And Mick, who's an English gentleman, would go, and Lindsay said, "Not that way," and he could give me the sticks. And so we set it up, and Lindsay did actually the overdubs.
How were you able to handle all the tension in making this?
It wasn't tension for me. I was just, the more tension they had, the more time I had to work on sounds, which is.
And tell us about the things that you think were innovative in making this record as an engineer producer.
Just we made things sound much bigger than they were. I had a console that had knobs, and I could send effects out. I could send a delay out. I could send reverb out. I could send music through a Leslie speaker, like you probably heard the Beatles did on some of their songs, and we would just make it sound so amazing.
The follow-up record was called Tusk, and that is supposedly a flop, although it did 4.4 million units around the world.
Right.
What was the deal with Tusk?
Well, we thought, without asking Lindsay, we thought we were going to be making Rumours 2. We were going to fix everything that was wrong with Rumours and do it just like Rumours. And so I built a studio in West LA for us to record Tusk. And but Lindsay, the first day Lindsay walked in the studio, and he freaked out with his girlfriend that told him he was kind of being a wuss, and he needed to be more punk. So he cut his hair all off, and he just chopped all his curly locks, and he just cut it all off, and he cut his Levi's up, and so we're starting to record, and I said, let me get some sounds from you, play your guitar, and I'm doing my thing. And then he waits patiently until we're all done. And he goes, "You done?" I said, "Yeah, it sounds really great." He goes, "Okay, now, before we record, I want you to turn all the knobs the opposite direction." Which, like, I just made all these incredible things, and where's the audio guy? So I literally turned it, and everything went just all muddy. And he said, "Now let's record just like that." Put it in record. I said, "Hang on, wait a minute. What are you talking about? You're trying to tell me that you want an emphasis on the bottom end of the record?" And he goes, "Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying." So right off the bat, we had this issue with Lindsay going crazy. And then later on, a few days later, he started saying, "I want to do this. If you don't do it my way, I'm quitting." And the moment he said that, he kind of looked around like that I overstepped my grounds, and the band was like, "Oh, we don't want you quitting." So this is the beginning of him wanting to.
So he kind of took over and imposed his will, and made a experimental almost record of sorts.
Yeah, every song of his, he had us distort the guitar, the vocal. I remember he wanted to have the vocal distorted, so he sat down, and he wanted me to put the microphone on the floor, and he got down in the push-up position, and he was singing, "I go your own way," and it was distorting, and when he took my guitar amp and just distorted it, and it was just, everything was just tearing and ripping, like distortion happens in tape machine. So that's what he wanted. A lot of times he would take his songs and tapes home to his house where he had built a little studio, and we'd sit in the studio at the Village for maybe a week, and we wouldn't hear from him. So he just wanted to do it his way. He was afraid that we were going to make it too sweet. And I remember that at one point, John McVie and Mick, actually, John put his bass in the trash can, and John and Mick both put gaffer's tape over their mouth, and they photographed in there. This was their protest for, we're not allowed any input to do this.
So what makes a great producer?
I guess going with the flow, just trying to make I wanted to have all these colors and sounds and 8 notes here and 16th notes and playing against, whole notes and quarter notes and just instrument and colors and sounds, and which is what I learned during that summer making that record with Lindsay, and what makes it sound beautiful.
Who else have you worked with?
And I've worked with a lot of people, but my daughter was really the one that I had.
Okay, let's talk about her. What's her name?
Colbie Caillat.
Right. And did you produce her?
Yep.
And she wrote her own music?
She wrote her own music. I remember as a dad, I used to hear her every morning, and she would be singing like a songbird, and 6 o'clock in the morning, she'd be singing. She heard Lauryn Hill on the radio, and she would do all these runs like Lauryn Hill, just singing. And my oldest daughter, her sister, would just be like, she was a teenager, and just, "You're driving me crazy, Colbie." And I said, if you're going to sing, because you're kind of doing some crazy stuff with your voice, I said, let's get you a vocal coach. And a good friend of the family's was this vocal coach. Her name is Michelle Gruska. We still use her now, but she anyway taught Colbie how to sing and control her voice, and
she had hits.
Yeah, she had hits. So anyway, I was driving home from the studio one day, and I thought to myself, what am I going to do with Colbie? She can sing, but sing what? And I walked into the house, and I said, just occurred to me, Colbie, that you being able to sing is just part of the answer. So I said, it seems to me that you're going to have to learn to play an instrument and learn to write your own songs. And I said, if you learn to write your own songs, what comes out of your hands will go into your brain, and you will sing something that's beautiful. And I taught her what a verse is and the relationship between a verse and a chorus, and what's a bridge. And I taught her all that, and she just, it was like the easiest thing.
How old was she then?
15 maybe, or maybe 18, but she just took it in stride. And I really didn't have much to do after that. She just wrote these songs, and they just started coming in. The day after her first guitar lesson, she learned 2 chords, and she wrote a song. I said, you can't write a song with 2 chords. You need to have at least. But anyway, it worked.
And she got a deal, and you helped her?
Yeah, we moved to this new location, and she came with us, and she said, I used to offer her $100 for every song she would write. Only because she had a girlfriend who was really a greedy, I suppose. And I knew that she'd be needling Colbie to write songs. But yeah, so she wrote Bubbly at this house we moved into. She goes, Dad, I don't write anymore. I said, because you're always going out. So I said, why don't you stay home? And unpack your boxes. And so she spent the weekend working, writing songs. She borrowed my video camera, so she could record her song and get it on tape. So we have this on tape with her. All you can see is her foot. She's working out the lyrics, and her friend put it up on MySpace, her song Bubbly.
But it took off.
It took off, and next thing you know, she's saying, Dad, I got these attorneys are calling, and they want me to sign something. And okay, I had to get involved.
There is a hit Broadway play. It's called Stereophonic. It is the most nominated play in the history of Broadway. And a lawsuit was filed by Ken Caillat, as I understand it, saying, hey, that's my story out of my book. Can you talk about it?
Well, the lawsuit says I shouldn't, but I mean, I can be very vague. But my daughters were the ones that they went and saw the play, and they called me at intermission. They said, Dad, it's your book. So I went, really? And then the New Yorker magazine called me and said, do you know about this play? We think it's your book. And so anyway,
You went, you saw it.
I saw it, and the lead character was an engineer named Will Grover, which was me. And they were in Sausalito making a record. He had a cohort, a co-engineer. So it just kind of seemed similar. And we had a studio. We used to go to this bar to meet girls called Agatha's Pub. They had an Agatha's Pub.
Oh,
So
okay. So let's go down. Let's talk. What are you doing now?
now I'm just working with kids. I have a company called Artist Max and a company called Marshmallow Skies Recording Studios. And the recording studio does Atmos mixing, the surround immersive audio mixing. And Artist Max is kind of like in my days when I was working with Colbie. I would have to send her on the road with coordinators and teach her how to sing and stand and talk to people. And she used to just say, we love you, Colbie, somebody would say. And she goes, thank you. And so I had a girl talking in her ears, and we had to pay it's like $1,000 a week to this woman. And but she taught Colbie how to be a star. Now Colbie can talk better than I can. So Artist Max is what that is we if you want to learn how to write a song, we have people that we can work with you. We can teach you songwriting. We can teach you instrumentation. We can teach you movement. We have choreography. Teach you how to look like a rock star at on a kid's budget. So,
And this immersive sound is what?
Immersive sound is Dolby. The commercial name is Dolby Atmos, and it's basically 13 speakers around the room and above the listener. And so I took like Rumours and Colbie's album, and I took the instruments and placed it throughout the room, and it's amazing because when you mix in stereo, I have maybe 25 tracks that I have to choose between the left speaker and the right speaker, and somewhere it's got to go in between. But it's like when you take a picture of a bunch of people, you always try to tell them to make sure you can see the camera so we can see your face. Well, it's all like all those instruments are squished in there, and you can't hear the guitar that's playing over the other thing. So when you spread it out this way, it's like a breath of fresh air.
Thank you so much, Ken. This is so amazing to have Ken Caillat, who's one of the greatest producers in history, talking about it. And stay tuned for further episodes of Tune In with Trevor, and like it wherever you happen to see it. Okay? Thanks.
Thanks, Trevor.